How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the top 5 cheap V8s that you can buy for less than £5,000. I did V12s, I've done V10s, and you guys are asking for it, so here it is, V8s. That leads me on perfectly to topic of the week this week. What's your favourite V8 in the world? So your favourite car that's a V8. Mine would be probably the C63 AMG with the V8 bi-turbo. That car is sick and it sounds amazing. It's just a perfect V8 in my opinion. What's yours? Let me know in the comments, we'll have a chat about it. As always, remember that I make these videos from the UK market perspective, so prices in other countries may differ, and remember that whenever you're buying a second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, road tax, blah blah blah, all that's super important, but I'll try and talk about it in the video. Anyway, as always, remember to like, comment and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting us off at number 5 with the 4th generation Mustang GT with the 5-litre V8 engine that puts out 215 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in around 6.9 seconds. When this Mustang was released, it heavily split opinion as it was the first major redesign of the car in 15 years, going from the more boxy style of Mustang we're used to a slightly more rounded coupe style body. It was actually based on the Fox platform, which is also a platform for cars like the Capri, Thunderbird and Cougar, as well as 2 of the previous Mustangs. The Windsor V8 in the car that you can afford for your $5,000 is actually the same small block that was used in the 1993 Mustang GT, though another V8 was made available from 1996. This engine was actually in use by Ford from 1968, with different stages of the engine going into cars like the Ford Torino and the original Ford Mustang. Compared with the standard Mustang, the GT came with stiffer suspension, dual exhaust and larger 16-inch wheels. When first introduced in 1994, these features helped the car win Motor Trend's Car of the Year. Your £5,000 will get you a 1995 model with around 50,000 miles on the clock, which is pretty good for a car that shares its lineage with this. In terms of reliability, the engine is actually renowned for lasting a very long time, and many owners note having put hundreds of thousands of miles into the GT. However, a lot of the car, including mechanical parts like the intake manifold, are plastic and therefore have issues with cracking. In the UK, the car is also quite rare, making it slightly more difficult to get parts for the car, though still not impossible. As an overall, I personally am not a fan of the look of this Mustang. I much prefer the first generation to much newer models. However, as with any lineage, it's important to respect your ancestors, and this Mustang GT was an important step on the rung to Mustangs we see today, and for under £5,000 it well deserves its place on this list. Taking 4th place with the 3rd generation Lexus GS430, also known as the S190, which hosts a 4.3-litre V8 that puts out 279 brake horsepower, 417 Nm of torque, and does 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds. It was produced between 2005 and 2011, though originally the GS was previewed by the LFS, which kinda looks like a futuristic GS in my opinion. It was the first Lexus model to integrate the company's new design philosophy, L Finesse, which is characterized by 3 Japanese kanji characters that translate as intriguing elegance, incisive simplicity, and seamless anticipation. I have no idea what those really mean when it comes to cars, but they sound pretty cool anyway. The focus of the GS is mostly to be a luxury saloon. It aims at the same market as BMWs and Mercedes. Hence, it has some quite luxury interior options that include different types of leather and real wood. Some of the features were quite luxurious for the time too, like solar energy absorbing glass, a 7-inch touchscreen on the center console, water repellent windows and an acoustic windscreen, and all the other features you might expect. This luxury point was made very clear by Lexus collaborating with Neiman Marcus to make a limited edition GS at a price of $65,000, all 75 of which sold within the first 3 hours of their release. £5,000 is about the minimum you can expect to spend on a GS430, and you're looking at around 100,000 miles on the clock. And though that sounds like a lot, the reliability on the GS430 is very highly regarded, with the engine and transmission being considered almost bulletproof. Of course, the suspension, brakes, tyres, electrics, etc. are all still subject to wear and tear and the odd issue, but one key USP of Lexus is the fact that they are generally supposed to be very reliable, which has helped them overtake the European luxury manufacturers in sales over in the US. Not a super exciting V8 in my opinion, but a solid one nonetheless to take the 4th spot on this list, and for less than $5,000 you're really getting a lot of V8 and a lot of reliability with this Japanese luxury saloon. In 3rd we have the E39 BMW 540i, which has a 4.4-litre V8 putting out 286 brake horsepower, 420 Nm of torque, and does 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. Slightly slower than the Lexus, but it's also slightly older, as it was produced between 1995 and 2003, making it the 2nd oldest car on this list. The car was designed by Joji Nagashima, the same man that designed the E36 as well as the Z3 Roadster. You can certainly see some similarities between the E39 and the E36, which is pretty consistent with most generations of 3 Series and 5 Series, though I think the E39 is infinitely better looking and certainly heading for classic status. The E39 has received a pretty significant amount of praise and was named in the Car and Driver 10 Best list 6 consecutive times from 1997 to 2002, and in 2001 Consumer Reports gave it the highest car rating ever, suggesting it was the best car they'd ever reviewed. The 540i is considered so highly that you'll find many forums in agreement that you should go for one over the E39 M5, as it's supposedly fast, reliable and cheap. A set of 3 features you can only ever have 2 of seemingly, and as if that wasn't enough, the engine sounds great too. And though the E39 M5 is highly praised too, the 540i gives you many of the positives and fewer drawbacks. For example, the M5's Vanos system is renowned for tolerance issues, something the 540i doesn't suffer from. The M5 has no spare tyre due to the size of the exhaust. The 540i does have a spare tyre. The M5 gets around 25 miles per gallon, and the 540i gets over 30 miles per gallon. The M5 uses expensive and special oil, whereas the 540i uses regular cheap 10W30, etc, etc, etc. You can pick up a 540i for as little as £3,000 for a high mileage example, and £5,000 will get you around the 100,000 mile mark for a manual example, and though I know I bang on about manuals, this time it's not because I simply like them, it's because the manual transmission is far more reliable than the auto box. As I mentioned, these 540i's are generally built like tanks, but they are still subject to the same wear and tear issues in terms of bushes and suspension, and cooling systems are always worth checking as they can fail. A huge positive about this car is the V8 used in it is very common among BMWs of its era, so parts are very easy to find and relatively cheap for such a big engine. All in all, quite possibly one of the best cars on this list in terms of what you're getting for your money. Sure, it's not big brake horsepower, but it's still got enough to let you waft along comfortably, and it's a car that is, in my opinion, on its way to classic status. Taking the runner-up spot, we have the Mercedes CL500 and CLK500, as they both share a 5-litre V8 that puts out 306 brake horsepower, 460 Nm of torque, and takes them from 0 to 60 in 6.3 and 5.8 seconds respectively. The difference between these two cars is not just an extra letter and 0.5 of a second from 0 to 60, the C209 CLK was actually based on the W203 C-Class platform, while the C215CL was based on the W220 S-Class. So while they do look similar-ish, they are in reality completely different platforms with different purposes. The CLK is supposed to be the sportier car with options like the CLK 63 AMG Black Edition and the CLK DTM AMG topping the line, while the CL is the luxury cruiser, with a focus on including some of the incredible technology that is normally seen in S-Class models, like keyless entry and drive, rain sensing windscreen wipers, light sensors for the headlights, and self-closing doors. I've spoken a lot about the CL in previous videos, so I won't go into too much depth here, but click the icon on the top right if you want to see a full overview of this beast. Focusing on the CLK 500 though, I'm actually a bit dubious about its sportiness. I know I tend not to go overboard with my opinions in these videos, but I'm going to do exactly that right now. It's still pretty luxurious inside with the right features to pamper the driver back when the car was in production, and unless you get one of the AMG or DTM variants like the ones I mentioned, it doesn't really look very sporty to me. I would actually say that the more waft focused CL looks like a way more sporty and exciting car despite being bigger and longer. If the CLK was supposed to make the C-Class look more sporty, then it hasn't done anywhere near as well as the CL has done in making the S-Class look more sporty, is what I'm trying to say. That said, you can pick up the CLK for as little as £2,500 with high mileage, or for £5,000 you'll get a 2002 model with around 80,000 miles on the clock. In terms of the CL, you're looking at a 2004 model with around 70 to 80,000 miles for 5k, but as with the CLK you can get one for around £2,500. When it comes to reliability, neither car has a stellar record, but they aren't awful either. The V8 seems to be quite solid for the most part, rather it's a transmission control module that can have issues with leaking further into its life, though it's a simple fix. The CL has also been known to have issues with its techie ABC suspension, which can be quite expensive. The CLK is probably the better bet when it comes to maintenance, as it has far fewer expensive parts to fix, which are likely to go wrong on an underloved CL given its age. All in all, two pretty powerful, not bad looking Mercs for the money. I don't think they'll turn heads as much as some V8s on the market, but they'll certainly make you smile when they're working well and sounding like this. Taking the well-deserved top spot in this video, we have the Jaguar S-Type R, which is a supercharged 4.2 litre V8 that puts out 400 brake horsepower, 553 Nm of torque, and does 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds, making it the most powerful, most torquey, and quickest car on this list. Now before we can continue talking about the S-Type R, I have to mention two other V8 Jags that you can get for under £5,000, the XK8 and the XKR. The main reason why I've gone for the S-Type over them is that they're not quite as powerful, plus I've already spoken about them a fair bit in previous videos, so have a look at them. The S-Type was actually developed to revive the nameplate used by the 1963 to 1968 Jag, and you can certainly see some similarities between the two cars. At the time of production, the R was the fastest road production saloon car in the world, so Jaguar certainly weren't messing about with this revival, though the S-Type badge was ultimately sacked off in the end and replaced with the XF. With the 155 mph limiter removed, the R could do 191 miles per hour, and with a few simple supercharger pulley upgrades and ECU modifications, it can easily put out over 500 brake horsepower and exceed 200 miles per hour. That's pretty nuts for a car that you can get for less than half the price of a brand new VW up. Compared with the standard car, the R was given 18-inch alloys, a wire mesh grille, and monochromatic paint, as well as a rear apron, side skirts and front apron with built-in fog lamps, a rear spoiler, a brace located near the rear subframe, and R badging on the boot lid and both front fenders. And I personally quite like how it looks. I'm not a fan of the standard S-Type, which was heavily criticised for looking like a Rover 75, or just looking awkward, badly proportioned and generally a bit weird, but something about the R does just seem right. Despite Hammond describing it as hideous, May saying it looks like a dead cod, and Clarkson naming it the worst looking car on sale in 2004, the Top Gear boys actually gave the car a surprisingly good review in terms of performance when testing it against two other V8s, the Vauxhall Monaro V8 and the Chrysler 300C, and it utterly obliterated them in a straight line, which is to be expected with all that power. You can pick up one of these for as little as £4,000 with high mileage, and your £5,000 will get you one with just under 100,000 miles on the clock. Therefore, what's most important is the reliability. Key issues to look out for include the water pipe beneath the supercharger failing, which only costs around £20 to buy, but requires the supercharger to be lifted out to gain access, so it can cost you a lot in terms of labour. The rear suspension arm bushes are also prone to wear, and the auto box feeling jerky due to an electrical glitch on older models is quite common too, as well as rust on the sills, which is quite well known in this car. I personally really like the S-Type R. I probably wouldn't buy one as I'm not really in the right stage of my life yet for a regal looking Jag, but I can certainly see the allure, and given that 400 brake horsepower V8, it well deserves a top spot on this list. So in this video I've run you through the top 5 cheap V8s that you can buy for less than £5,000. Let me know which of the 5 was your favourite in the comments below, as well as obviously the topic of the week, so what is your favourite V8 of all of them? If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, the weather is absolutely stunning, hence I'm in this slightly rogue get-up today.